Nick, say some things.
Hi.
I would definitely recommend it.
Jokes only! Japes! Hi,
Ready to your
Japes!
You
face.
say Jakes?
I said Japes.
Oh, I thought you said Jakes. What do we...
History does include Jakes, Rodkin.
What are we talking about today?
Oh, fuck.
This?
You know what, Chris? It's October 7th, 2015.
This is Idle Thumbs 231. I'm Chris Remo.
I'm James Spafford.
I'm Jake Rodkin.
I'm Nicholas Brecken.
This is our first No Danielle episode in a while.
Yep. Hi, Danielle. I hope you're listening to this podcast. You'll be blown away by how many new hot games we've played this week, Danielle.
Oh, man.
This is our letter to Danielle Riendo.
An open letter to Danielle Riendo. Please be on this podcast again.
Please come back.
We should reiterate that Danielle is going to be launching a new podcast on our network called Idle Weekend with Rob Zacny of 3 Moves Ahead and Esports Today. And that our intention is that that will be live sometime this month. So we will mention on this podcast whenever the first episode is up, and we might put a clip of the first episode on this podcast to introduce you to it. So just, stay tuned to this feed and you will hear about it.
You can also follow Idle Weekend on Twitter. There's no tweets there yet. But
it's a shell of a Twitter account.
It's an empty account, but
you can be like the second person to follow it.
But at some point, a tweet might appear there that tells you that an episode is here.
Yeah, just the feed is Idle Weekend.
It's an egg right now. It's a good Twitter account.
It's a bad account, but it's there. It'll eventually be real.
Everything you've ever heard about those egg Twitter accounts is true of at Idle Weekend. We'll be putting up like a shitty anime face on it next week.
Oh, man. What a weird move that would be as branding for Idle Weekend.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I saw a guy on BART today on the train to work.
Yeah.
And I didn't see him from the front, so I could not speak to the front of his outfit. But his T-shirt was like a black, slightly too tight T-shirt for how this guy was built, with like a screened, like silk screened, single color American flag, like just sort of the stars and stripes in like just sort of halftone dither. And in the foreground of that was a black and white line art back of like a super ripped Goku with just his blonde hair. So it was like Goku standing there in like a tank top with the American flag in front of him, and it was all from behind. And I never saw this guy turn around.
When you started telling the story, I was like, oh, it's going to be about a Goku shirt. Like, obviously, it's going to be about a Goku shirt. And then you were like, and it has this like halftone dithered American flag. And I'm like, oh, okay, it's going to be a totally different thing. Holy shit.
No, Chris. It was clearly a Goku in front of the American flag.
Oh, man.
Anyway, Idle Weekend, a new podcast coming. We miss you, Danielle. We're talking about Goku shirts 3 minutes into the episode when you're not here.
Did you guys see that Far Cry Primal trailer? I mean, I know you did because I watched it.
Yes, Chris,
just watched that trailer.
I'm pretty sure that we did.
Yeah.
We're just on like the exponential ramp of what Far Cry is inevitably about.
Yeah.
It has now just been declared.
Right.
I'm actually
Animals piling on each other. Well, don't even have interesting opinion yet until we get generic opinion out of the way, Nick.
fine.
Wait, the Far Cry games have been, I mean, that curve is also, you can overlay the curve that you just described, Jake, onto the curve of like animal murder in terms of its primacy relative to the rest of Far Cry games, and that is the same curve.
Animal Murder, the Far Cry feature. I thought for a second that there was a game or game series that I was not aware
Cabela's Big Game, or I mean,
it's called Animal Murderer.
Yeah. But like that was a thing that in Far Cry 2 you can sort of inadvertent. I mean, in Far Cry 1, I don't remember what the deal with killing animals was. I don't really think that was a thing.
That's just like
game.
a load of islands and you hang glide around.
Right. And then Far Cry 2, it's like, okay, there are animals and they walk around and you can kill them.
You couldn't kill a lot of them, though.
Some of them you couldn't kill. That's true.
Like the zebras and the larger things. I think there's sort of the smaller, whatever, doodad type animals. I think you can.
You kill those
You know what I'm talking about.
You kill the
these
dewbacks.
little- Yeah.
And then Far Cry 3 and 4, I feel like just pushed that further with like as they got into the sort of craft a wallet from killing 40 pumas or whatever you did.
Right.
I
So,
can't remember. And then this game is just
Far
like
Cry Primal is just
Pumas from
admitting
Puma.
that was what Far Cry is now effectively about, as far as they're concerned, is just watching a bunch of animals pile on top of each other, killing them, skinning them, and making stuff out of them, so they make you a caveman. I guess.
Let's boil it down to the basics. What is Far Cry? It's hunting, skinning, making a wallet.
who
did that first?
Your, like
Caveman.
Pre-capitalism like beads or whatever.
Maybe there's a deeper sim element where you actually evolve through your crafting, and then you eventually invent capitalism.
Man, that would tie in. So I read an article about this game, just like a little like blurb basically, and it described the setting as prehistoric, which it is, but it wrote it hyphenated pre-historic in sort of a quaint kind of way like that. And when I read it that way, it my brain just like instinctively
This leads to history.
yes, that's exactly what I thought. And then I'm like, and then because I'm such a shitty like video game person who just has video game references in my brain, I had a microsecond where I confused this series with Assassin's Creed.
Oh,
which is,
you know what's
which
funny?
is Ubisoft's actual series about history, like,
Right.
ostensibly.
I actually thought this was like they did that crazy like whatever 12-hour reveal of this where it was just live streaming a cave wall that was slowly the camera was just slowly zooming out.
And you thought it was going to be Caveman Assassin's Creed?
I thought for sure it was going to be Caveman Assassin's Creed, and then I found out it was whatever Far Cry Primal, and then the first thing I assumed, it's just going to be some goofy dinosaur game. All right, I get it. They're just going to go all out. And
Right,
just
that
make
trailer ends with the good dinosaur.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what
holy
I figured.
shit.
I figured they would just do the dinosaur game that everybody wants.
What's actually going to happen
really strange.
is the game itself is going to end with alien Pope, like Apple staff guy who ties this in.
Chris, the last thing that you craft in Far Cry Primal is a Hawaiian shirt.
Yes.
For sure. And then he just buttons it up, and then it cuts as
prequel.
Far Cry.
Right.
Yeah. Amazing.
Far Cry 1.
Yeah,
this is effectively
stitch your
Far Cry
hand
0.
glider.
Yeah, this is Far Cry 0. It ends with you and your girlfriend getting on a speedboat,
Yeah,
and then you get shot and have amnesia, and there's aliens and government conspiracies.
No, it's like mutants and stuff in Far Cry 1.
yeah.
Oh, I thought...
You're thinking of Crisis.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. There's mutants and stuff, and stupid smugglers that also are involved with mutants.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's then going to be revealed that the Far Cry Primal situation is in fact like an M. Night Shyamalan-esque isolated...
Yeah, like Planet of the Apes thing where this isn't actually prehistory. It's...
Doesn't the end of this
it's the
teaser
future.
sort of imply that might be the case? Or something is up? Like, Nick, you had a response to
My response was not related to that.
Oh, because a stupid splicer shows up in the last, 3 seconds of this video.
Yeah, I suppose it's a splicer.
Wait, what was your reaction to that?
My reaction to that was that it actually struck me as if I don't know
When the
did
less
anybody-
caveman-y looking person showed up?
No,
Or
yeah,
just-
did anybody play The Forest, which is a game? That was-
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
it looked
did look like
exactly like that. to
all
me.
the nighttime survival-y stuff looked like the forest as well.
Yeah. Even the animation. But
Now,
anyway.
when that weird lady showed up at the end with the splicer mask, my assumption was there's a
right.
because you can't do you're a caveman straight. It has to be high concept caveman where there's also
Especially
an
in an
evolved
Ubisoft
society
game.
off to the side that lives in.
Yep.
They've already got ionic columns.
They have to also Lost has to be in here somehow. Like,
what if the cavemen found Lost?
I was kind of intrigued by, obviously they're cavemen, and so they speak caveman language.
No, that was European.
Yeah, okay.
That was the European trailer.
I was actually concerned. I was actually concerned that we had accidentally, because the trailer we watched had a Peggy rating, and I was briefly concerned that we had just loaded up a deep Eastern European or deep Scandinavian localization of that trailer, and there is in fact an English version, but I think they are speaking, quote, caveman language.
Yeah,
and we are not being offensive, and it's not just
well, you're being offensive.
Yeah.
Well, the rest of us aren't.
So, many people will enjoy playing a thing with subtitles on, but many people are not into that at all. So I wonder how they'll deal with that.
Maybe there's no subtitles?
Maybe it's just fuck
No,
it.
there's no way.
Maybe you
Just
craft the English language.
Yeah. Just It very rapidly develops
Kill enough,
into English.
killed enough mammoths to craft an alpha, like a dictionary.
Right, yeah. You write it in blood.
You wipe out enough panthers to craft, like, manual of style. You craft Strunk and
The
White.
gentleman's companion.
You've created Wikipedia.
Yeah.
It just sounds like a fake Game of Thrones language. All the dialogue in that sounded like Game of Thrones, like fakos.
Fakos. Frauds.
Yeah.
So this game comes out in, like, February for $60. So it is a full priced game. Because we were wondering, is it like a spin-off?
Is it like a Blood Dragon
Right. No,
precursor?
It seems like it's a full-on, like, the next Far Cry game. I don't know. Kotaku was speculating, like, they're making a real Far Cry 5, and this is their sort of off-year,
That was Nick's
kind of
theory
Assassin's
as well.
Creed,
That seems like what's going to happen, right? I mean, there's no way that they don't also announce a Far Cry 5 later that is a tropical hunting game with jeeps and shit.
Given the fact that they're at this point, like, there's just no. I mean, I'm not lamenting this. I'm just commenting. Like, there's no sanctity whatsoever to the notion of what the Far Cry world or property is. Like, it's just whatever they want it to be in a sort of vaguely, like, pastoral or tropical environment of some kind, and you fight things. Like, that's the Far Cry game.
There's
like,
no real lore or anything
so
at all.
Like, if
right?
it's going to be that, and if the Assassin's Creed series is going to just unto itself be so up its own ass in terms of just its crazy lore labyrinth that is constructed over the last decade, basically, at this point, I feel like you might as well just merge them, and this might as well just be like Assassin's Creed Prime, where the aliens come to Earth for the first time and seed all the stupid.
The
shit
next
that
Assassin's
happens in
Creed game is going to open
and the
with
assassin walks out of the spaceship.
Yeah,
whatever his name is.
No, you'll get the new Assassin's Creed game, install it. The opening cutscene from Far Cry Primal will play, and then it pans out, and you're playing it on a computer inside of that game testing facility. But then the content from that also just infects this game when you end up hunting a mammoth and stuff.
Then a mammoth just like busts through the wall of your video game development studio.
Right.
It's Jumanji now.
Far Cry Jumanji.
So
Totally in.
Far Cry Primal. I don't know. It's an interesting concept, I guess, for a game. It's been a while since. I feel like there have been games set in sort of prehistoric environments, but not recently.
Turok.
Yeah, Turok, I guess. Yeah.
Well, he hunts dinosaurs in that.
Those dinosaurs. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's not really cavemen.
Yeah.
So, no.
The early Tomb Raider games weren't obviously set in that time, but sort of had fewer people and was
and guns.
But you killed a lot of animals.
guns.
Yeah, you shot dinosaurs with guns.
Not since Bonk's Adventure
for the Turbo.
for the TurboGrafx 16.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of cavemen games on like the Amiga and
There's
stuff.
in fact a game called Caveman Games, I think.
Caveman
it's
Games.
like a California game style situation. I don't know. Maybe it's not. Oh, I think that is true because there was also one called the Caveman Ugh-Lympics I've just found accidentally.
Oh,
Ugh-Lympics.
Yeah, I remember that.
Not approved by the International Olympic Committee.
International Ugh-Lympics Committee.
Yes. The Ugh-Lympics really fuck up caveman societies.
Whatever, every cave that's hosted the Ugh-Lympics, just oof, never been the same. Really messed with the infrastructure.
Anyway, what's another thing we could talk about that isn't this thread?
What about this crazy game that's on the screen?
Yeah. So Spaff brought over. Did you bring this over to show us, or did you just happen to have it with you?
No, so I spotted that you had that MIDI controller lying around, which I was going to purchase to play this game on, and grabbed it to have a game on. This is Panoramical.
Yeah.
It's made by David Kanga, who did Proteus, music for Proteus.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And someone else whose name I've forgotten. But it's like a weird...
And it's being distributed by Finji, right?
Finji.
By Adam Saltzman's company.
Yeah, I think so. And maybe Polytron?
Yeah, I think those two.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so we have it set up. Do you want to play it, Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what exactly is that?
So what we have here,
this
Spaff
device, this
yeah,
input
so
device.
we have just a generic MIDI controller with dials and faders on it, and the game can be controlled by any MIDI device. So what the game is doing is it's rendering a like 3D soundscape, or like a 3D sort of seascape, I suppose. Just visual representation of music. It's kind of like controlling a Winamp visualizer. If you guys remember what that was like to like download crazy audio visualizers on your MP3 player in the early 2000s. It's like that, but fully 3D, and you have huge amounts of control. And as you mess with it, the visuals and the sound both change. So like you can hear those higher frequency elements come in and out, and that's as I'm like messing with these
like
faders.
Slowly turning dials and knobs on the MIDI controller.
And you just kind of fuck around with it.
The music in this level is by Dose One. He also did the music for Gang Beasts. Other cool things. Bion's done some music for this game.
This is everything on this level turned all the way down. And this is everything on this level turned all the way up. And then, you know, you can fuck with like different versions of it and like different states in between. And then you can like back out of any level and select a new level. Okay, so now I'm in a new level that's like a crazy, like, oh wow.
Just like out of phase almost.
Yeah.
Like,
so I have everything turned down now, so I can probably bring things in a little.
The thing this game actually reminds me of quite a lot is on the original Nintendo DS, Electroplankton.
Yeah,
It is very much Electroplankton, which was just a strange music and rhythm toy that you could kind of compose things on, seemingly, but you were also mostly just sort of screwing around with a bunch of musical layers.
Yeah, in this game, some of the soundscapes definitely feel like you have much more. Like, some of these, I feel like I'm just, like, this one, I just feel like I'm sort of fucking around.
You're just dialing the intensity of layers up and down? Yeah.
But well, not even that. Like, I can't even really perceive what I'm doing all the time. But some of the levels really do feel like you're basically doing a DJ set in real time, where you're controlling, you know, like actual musical elements that are coming in and out, and you're crossfading intentionally, and it feels like you can control like the beat coming in and out, and like, you know, the sort of percussive elements in the background, and like how rich the soundscape is. And it feels like you could be, some of these, it feels like you could be using them like in a club setting and actually driving, you know, a dance floor. It's cool. And some of them aren't. Some of them are just like this, and you're kind of just fucking around. It's called Panoramical. How much is this game, Spaff?
I think it's like $10-15.
Okay.
There is actually a professional version of it available for $100.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What does that do?
It gives you the license to use it as a visualizer,
like in
as in a show. Yeah, and it also gives you more options for like controlling it.
Oh, cool.
Devices and like adding in your own control schemes and stuff.
Does it let you like hook up like a gamepad if you don't have a weird MIDI controller?
Yeah, you can use keyboard, controller, and it also detects a whole bunch of MIDI controllers. Try playing some different levels. Some of them are way more musical than others. Some are just really odd. But yeah, it's just a fun, weird, visually appealing.
I just watched Fantasia for the first time, so this is like kind of vaguely interesting thinking about that.
Yeah.
You just watched Fantasia for the first time?
I know, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I know. I think I've watched every Disney film other than that.
Crazy.
It was the original Fantasia and not Fantasia 2000.
Correct.
Good. You did it.
Although I did go in and watch some of Fantasia 2000 just for the fun of it.
We, in Seattle a few months ago, we watched, we went to, did I mention this on the podcast? We went to a live performance by the Seattle Symphony of a bunch of segments from Fantasia and Fantasia 2000. So like they projected them on the screen, and then the orchestra played like in time the actual
really cool.
pieces
Wow,
live.
amazing.
It was really, really cool. Unfortunately, they played more of Fantasia 2000 than of the original Fantasia, and it revealed what a piece of shit that movie is compared to the original Fantasia.
Yeah.
Like there are good segments in it, but the average quality is so much lower. It's crazy how much worse it is than the original film.
That film is my dad's favorite movie. He watched it when he was a child in,
Oh, man.
in like theaters, and then like could never ever see it again until he was in his adult life, which is crazy.
In the 90s, Disney had a great run of re-releasing movies back into theaters.
Yeah. And that was the first time he saw it, or the second time he saw it or something. Imagine holding your favorite movie like that, never being able to actually see it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Chris, you're doing weird shit.
we can turn this off for now.
Yeah.
But it's cool. It's called Panoramical, and it's fun to fuck around with.
Man, they actually made a specific... You could buy a Panoramical MIDI controller, which I don't know if they... It feels like they sold out of them instantly, and I don't know if they're doing more prints of them or not, but you can get... Like, they sold just literally a collection of, 10 by 2 row of MIDI knobs that you could use as
That's
just
awesome.
as a specific
Yeah, it's
controller
like
for
$100.
this.
I guess
Yeah.
it's gone now. They only made 50 of them.
Yeah, it
But
looks...
you can just use a standard, one of those guys is about $60-ish.
This is a Korg Nano Control 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything that is of that style, if you look it up, that's just a lot of sliders and knobs that use MIDI you can use to just do what Chris is doing right now. Okay.
I mean, I can't. How am I supposed to do with this? You can turn it off.
I guess.
Yeah, so that is a cool thing. I knew that this game existed, but I don't think I even knew enough about it to realize this is what it was. So I'm glad you brought it over, and I'm glad that we had a weird device for you to notice and plug into your laptop while you were waiting for the podcast.
I've been
to
browsing
start.
those for a while because I just wanted to get one to play it on properly.
Nice.
So yeah, I recognized it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks
That
for
MIDI
that.
controller is our programmer Ben uses it for shader tuning, apparently.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah. That's a tip, by the way. If you do work that involves any kind of work that involves fine tuning numbers, even if it has something to do with audio, a really, really, really great way to fine tune numbers is to use dials and knobs on audio and music MIDI controllers. If the software you're using supports MIDI control, it is so much more intuitive and
To dial in that float.
yeah, it's true. That's just a tip for software.
Computers.
Yep.
My life was changed after watching that insane visualizer for the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, are you more at peace now or something?
I'm at peace. What I'm ready for,
It's Far Cry Primal.
it's ruined. It's ruined now, Nick. It's ruined. Whatever I was feeling before was replaced by
Oh,
visions
man.
of 1,000 spears killing a giant mammoth for no reason to make a huge wallet. Nick, I heard you've been playing video games.
Oh man, I've been playing a really dumb video game.
What is that?
So I saw.
So this piece of shit, Panoramical.
No, I was on Twitter the other day and I saw a review for this game, and usually I would not click on a link to a review of a game
Ever.
like this or ever.
Okay.
But it was World of Warships, which.
Oh.
So here's the thing.
That's the World of Tanks people, right?
Yes, it is the World of Tanks people.
Is ships capitalized?
No.
No. They're not using
Unfortunately.
Blizzard.
They're not using
style?
Blizzard style guide.
They also made World of Warplanes, right?
Yes, they have a whole World of War blanks.
Crap. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So they've done land, air, and sea.
Yeah, but I've been very in the dark on I remember being at trade shows and I would see the wargaming.net booth, which was always just massive, and people were just all over that booth. People are nuts
doesn't
for these
World
games.
of Tanks have a competitive scene of some kind?
Oh yeah, it's
yeah.
extremely robust. And,
A world of thanks to World of Tanks.
Oh God.
So I was curious to check out. I read this review and it was a fairly decent review, and I went, all right, I guess I'll check this out. And then sort of as a byproduct, gather some understanding of what this massively popular thing is now. Turns out it's actually a pretty decent game, which is, I guess, the most surprising thing, because I assumed it being kind of free to play, or at least I guess just not knowing much about World of Tanks.
That's the thing that you sort of assume in the air.
I assume it is a really aggressive slot machine kind of structure where it's pulling you along, and then at some point saying spend bucks to get the cool tank or the cool ship. As it turns out, you can't actually even do that if you want to. I mean, there are a few ships in this game. I guess I should just talk about the game generally. It's very simple. It's sort of an arcadey simulation, which is a blend of the two, right? But more on the arcade side of just World War II naval warfare, I guess. But it's sort of broken down in a very Team Fortressy way, where there are sort of different ship types and they all sort of complement each other, and you're on teams of 10 or 12 at the start of a round. You're at opposing ends of the map, and then you can like zoom all the way out and get a really nice like strategic view of everything. And a lot of it is like actual teamwork and like coordination. It's just a good, like decent multiplayer round-based thing. It's just really surprising to me because the rest of the game is actually a fairly it's not an annoying treadmill. I mean, like sure, they're actually like you can upgrade your ships, and you like I said, you can. There are like 2 ships I think that you can just outright buy, but the rest you can't possibly even do that. You have to actually like play the game and get better at the game. And I don't know. There's not a lot to say about it. It's just it was really interesting to dip into the waters of all that craziness.
And realize how wrong you were.
Well, in a way,
dip into the waters of the world of warships.
Yeah,
so good.
Yeah. No, I mean like
dip into our waters, my lord.
But if you stripped out the sort of wargaming.net aspect of this game, it would be the sort of game that, I don't know, would have been popular on Steam like 6 years ago, probably.
But I mean, it is really popular, though.
Oh, it is very popular. I'm just saying...
You're saying it would have also been popular 6 years ago. You're just saying it's timeless.
Well, yeah, I thought you were going to say like 15 years ago or something, like on the PC strategy.
Yeah, I meant 15. I'm just getting
6
old.
years ago. It's like,
6 years ago.
Oh,
2001.
When you're like, man, 2005. That was what, like 3 years ago?
Yeah, that's exactly what my brain just did.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Classic 6 years ago. 2009.
Mm-hmm. Gross. Anyway, yeah, there's not much to say about it other than it's I would check it out if World of Warships sounds like an interesting title to you.
Why do you you're like you used to play Silent Hunter, right? Submarine?
Yeah.
Submarine games?
Yeah, this is
I can't imagine it's as simulational as that.
It is not, but things that surprised me were that there's a destroyer class of ship that sort of specializes in torpedoes that you kind of have to have some skill, but then also a strategic mind in order to understand when to approach the a particular enemy ship. And like they're like, it is, if you're trying at this game, if you're not just the guy who's just running through the middle of the map being a doofus, it actually is from a strategic standpoint fairly interesting. So yeah, I don't know. It's I would check it out if it
You did check it out.
I did check it out. Check it out.
I would I definitely recommend it.
I would definitely. It's pretty good.
God damn it.
Yeah. Anyway.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm gonna ask you one more thing about this.
Yeah.
Why do you like? Obviously, there's no reason you
should
have to know
you
this,
check it out.
But why do you think that these games are so incredibly popular? Because they seem really, really popular to me.
Yeah, it's I think it's a combination of things. The round length, it's not it's filling an interesting niche, I think, because it's not Rocket League short, but it's not Dota long, right? Mm-hmm. It's in the middle, which actually feels pretty good to me. Like, I think you can complete...
TF2 round length?
No, way shorter than that. I mean,
I guess TF2 round length can vary insanely depending on what game type you're playing.
Right,
too.
and it's Counter-Strike style, so once you're dead, you're done for the round. And so you just bop out to the menu and...
just bop out?
Just bop right out. just bop out.
Bop out of your warship.
Dip your toes or whatever.
Warboat.
But no, it's a combination of, I think, like a 15-minute round, which feels like this isn't just like a baby game where you're just, where there's
it's not a baby game like Counter-Strike.
Well, there's nothing to it.
I mean, Rocket League. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Well, those are baby games.
That's much shorter than I thought they were, actually. I thought it was far more of a longer strategy. I don't know. They
can run on for as long as maybe 30 minutes if you're really like grinding it out. It just sort of depends on your play style. But I think that's what it is. It sort of allows people to do what they want to do within sort of this larger structure of the round. Like, if you want to just be the guy that runs at the enemy team and whatever, like a kamikaze, and then just go out to the menu and play another round, that's fine. Like, there's a function for that within like a team that is trying to do something. So and it's that, and then also just the treadmill for upgrades that are and you can't really, you can speed it up, but you can't really buy them. I don't know, it's satisfying in the sort of it's not a slot machine, it's something that you're planning for. And there's a tech tree that you have to study and kind of go, okay, I want to get to here and go down. And so yeah, I don't know. it's like just enough of a meta layer coupled with sort of a medium length, satisfying like round.
It's kind of weird to me that it's round based at all. I assume because of their name that they'd aped.
Yeah,
that it would be an MMO of some kind.
This is the kind of game that proves. So a thing that has been the case on the PC ever since, I don't know, like the late 90s, maybe, has been the existence of games with fanatically huge followings that can exist like totally under the radar of mainstream video game coverage and like mainstream sort of social media discussion.
Right, like World of Tanks could have gotten an article in PC Gamer when it first came out, and but you would not know that after that one half page, it has then had a community of hundreds of thousands or millions or however fucking much forever.
And there have been PC games like that for like 20 years now, basically. But it feels now like we're past that era of the PC, and the sort of indie renaissance that's been the case over the last decade. The PC has become kind of more mainstream again as a game playing platform, and Steam is there, so everything is sort of institutionalized, and there's the Humble Bundle and all these things that kind of make PC games feel like more of a kind of overtly presented ecosystem in the way that consoles are, right? Because stuff like this doesn't happen on consoles because everything goes through, like maybe like the Final Fantasy MMOs is like the closest thing I can think of to that on a console, and those still don't count because they're freaking Final Fantasy games. And it's cool that there's still things like this where someone like me who should know about this stuff, I'm still just like, oh, it's like a free-to-play MMO. Nope, it's like this crazy strategy game that infinite people play, and you just don't know anything about it.
It's really weird. It's just an audience thing that I think it just doesn't overlap with the audience that I would normally be aware of.
But I like that I like that the platform can support.
Well, yeah, and I also
audiences that different and big.
Yeah, and I like that they're probably liking it for really valid reasons. I mean, it's a well-designed game. It does a lot of things that I would say, are actually taking from other games. It's really, really smart choices. And it's also just really gorgeous. Just things that I did not expect at all. Yeah. I assumed, it's just going to be kind of a funky little free-to-play game. You can crank this thing up and it looks amazing. It's really strange. I don't know. Awesome. Yeah, it's a really bizarre thing to experience because I'm not going to play it for much longer than I have, but I don't know. Yeah, I know there's a lot of games out there.
You found the 2015 version of people who just live inside of flight simulators for
their
entire
that's
lives.
Exactly what this is. Yeah. It's hitting that audience, and which actually was underserved for a long time, so it makes sense that this is back, right? World of Warplanes, I'm sure, is extremely, popular because Microsoft isn't making whatever combat sim that it was making before. Yeah.
Well, nearly a ton of those games that are under the radar and do exist forever tend to all be about war. Right?
Yeah, it's
either
a lot of them
II era or Civil War era.
I think it's
with the very obsessed.
I mean, I think it's because that is a sort of kind of,
or like driving a truck.
Oh yeah, true. There's a kind of the world has become really sort of hospitable to nerds in the last decade or two, but only a certain kind of nerd. Like there's like a sanctioned kind of nerd, which is the kind
it's a
that likes
pop culture geek nerd,
right? Pulpy sci-fi and fantasy, basically, like space opera and like kind of approachable fantasy stuff.
Actually,
but then there's other kinds of nerds, like history nerds and stuff, who have who that's just not part of the sort of like sanctioned, socially acceptable nerds. So like that kind of nerd has just been totally underserved by culture for a long time.
Kings. So they're happy.
That's true. Crusader Kings is a really
for the underserved nerd
overlap in terms of a breakout hit that typically would have only been for that kind of person with that with like interest in those historical periods. That game totally broke out of that in a really amazing way.
Yeah.
idlethumbs.net/3MA is the podcast for you if any of these games sound appealing.
Man, so we've mentioned Rob Zacny a lot on this podcast recently because he is one of the hosts of Esports Today, which is currently the newest show on our network, as well as 3 Moves Ahead, as well as our upcoming Idle Weekend. But he is totally the kind of guy who's really well-versed. He and Troy Goodfellow, who are the two co-founders, or sort of co-leads, I suppose, of 3 Moves Ahead. I love talking to Rob, who I knew well when I lived in Boston, because he is totally one of those guys who can just bring up fascinating references from history in a way that is not like condescending or kind of
I think he's just actually excited about their relevance to the conversation more than he's excited about telling you about that he knows it.
He doesn't ever want to appear like he's superior because he has all this knowledge.
Because he is. He doesn't have to because he is.
Because he fucking is. Like, he's so fucking smart.
Because Rob
and
Zacny
knows
is a
so much
superior
about history
being.
and reads, like, just interesting history books all the time and just super well versed in that stuff.
Wow.
And I'm glad that there are avenues for people with those interests to, like, actually play well-made things. And, like, I don't know. It's cool. It's good that stuff has found the ability to sort of flourish in a niche way.
Man, I feel really dumb when it comes to history. I've been watching Drunk History and that show.
I love
you're
that
just like,
show.
oh, I didn't know that. And you're like, God damn it, I'm learning stuff from a stupid show about people being drunk. But it's such a good show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I should read more history. When I was a kid, I hated history. And I remember my dad didn't ever read fiction. Like, my dad only read biographies and history. And I only read fiction. Like, I basically never read nonfiction. And, like, as an adult, I still pretty much read, it's still pretty much what I read, still pretty much fiction. But every once in a while, I'll just, like, end up reading a history book and I'll actually really enjoy it. But then I'll just forget to do that anymore for, like, a year. Because I think it's just not part of what's expected out of adulthood anymore. You know, I feel like it used to be, it just used to be like if you're sort of an adult who's interested in the world and interested in things, like, you know, one of the things it's sort of expected that you'll have some amount of knowledge about history. But it doesn't feel like that's just part of the template of being an adult.
No one's expected to make an allusion to anything in history ever when relating anything to anything in conversation. But if you watch old movies, people do it all the goddamn time.
Yeah, that's true.
What about prehistory?
Why refer to history?
Yeah.
When history is always changing, it's in flux because the time stream has been meddled with so much. See the chart on my wall that I bought off the internet. What? Did you know that there was a time when the Sixth Doctor and Marty McFly were in the same state?
What?
It's not true. I don't think. I have to consult my chart.
God, everything is going crazy with Back to the Future right
Man, did you guys know that today was the day when Marty McFly went Back to the Future?
I hope this episode actually comes out on that day because it's fucking close.
It's definitely today. It's 100% today. It's not a single day off. It's definitely
Guaranteed.
today. And no matter how many tweets you send to me or how many emails you write into questions@idlethumbs.net, you won't convince me otherwise because I know that I'm right, and I'm definitely right. And there's no chance that I'm anything other than right.
There's no chance it's next week.
No.
God.
Definitely.
We're actually really fucking close to it because it is actually November 22nd.
No, it's not. It's
definitely
it's whatever
right
date
now.
today is. I can't remember what date today is.
Yeah,
but I
people who
know
are
that
listening
it's
to this episode
now.
today, they'll know that it's November 22nd.
Exactly. Or, I mean, whatever date it is.
No, it's
And that's the
You guys want to take a break?
no.
day that the Doctor was in Chicago or something?
Yeah,
Is that
that's
what
true.
you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, we just take a break.
Video game. This week's episode of Idle Thumbs is brought to you by a new sponsor, Artbotic. So Artbotic this is a really interesting concept. Basically, they will, on a quarterly basis, send you a box in the mail that is filled with exclusive autographed art. So you get 2 hand-signed, hand-numbered prints from kind of up-and-coming illustrators and artists. You get a limited-run T-shirt designed by an artist. You get like a bunch of stickers, a bunch of just like other like goodies and things that come in the box. But it's basically a way that you can collect interesting, cool art, and you can see examples of it on their website at artbotic.com. That comes from a variety of artists that they like pull together every 3 months.
That's ARTBOTIC.
It is exactly that. If you go to artbotic.com and use the coupon code THUMBS, you will get $5 off. So that is a way to sort of try this out, get a discount on it. It's an interesting thing. And I saw also on their website that a portion of the proceeds are going towards an initiative that will help fund arts programs in countries like Laos and Nepal and the Philippines and Kenya. So,
that's cool.
Yeah, that is a cool thing. Yeah, I haven't really seen anything quite like this before. There's obviously subscription programs are becoming popular, but this is a totally like different.
It's like Loot Crate, but completely different take.
Yeah, totally different take. So it's cool. It's called Artbotic, and if you go to artbotic.com, it's spelled like it sounds, you know,
Like
ART,
robotic.
Yeah, but with an art. Like if it was an art robot, but instead of a robot, it was talented human beings making things by hand. If you go to that website, artbotic.com, and use the coupon code THUMBS, you get $5 off. So thanks, Artbotic.
Don't mention it, Chris. Sorry. Don't mention it, Chris. That's the really lazy Artbotic impression. This is how I sound now.
Yeah, robots have come a long way. Or Artbots, sorry.
There's a real person here.
Video game. This episode of Idle Thumbs is also brought to you by MeUndies, a provider of high-quality underwear and other basic garments that we appreciate. I can vouch for personally. Jake, do you know how sexy confidence can be? Do you, Jake Rodkin?
No. Yes, Chris. It's a thing that I think about often.
That you put into practice?
I wish.
That's confidential.
Well, you might be able to push yourself a little further along that spectrum with MeUndies. Yeah. If you go to MeUndies.com and use MeUndies.com/thumbs.
Huh.
Yes. You will get 20% off your first order. And they will know that we sent you there, and therefore you're helping us out a bit. But if you go to MeUndies.com/thumbs, you get 20% off. You will also get free shipping on all your orders. They have high quality underwear for both men and women. They have a variety of different kinds of clothing. They're really good. They're high quality. They come in a bunch of different colors and patterns. It's a good place to get good high quality basic undergarments that will probably last longer than like the plastic bag you get at the drugstore full of boxers.
Is that what you normally wear as underwear?
I mean,
just a plastic bag.
When I went, well, this isn't really related to MeUndies, but when I went home for Thanksgiving last year, I lost my my luggage, or like one piece of luggage at the airport that had all my underwear in it. So I went to just like a drugstore and bought just like a $5 like bag of underwear. It wasn't good underwear. Surprise. My MeUndies are better than that. So
I imagine the question you asked me earlier about confidence was not part of the ad. It was just a thing on your mind when you were looking at me and you were
that just came. I was a bolt out of the blue.
You looked at me and you said whatever you said about confidence.
Mm-hmm. I was sexy. Like, Jake Rodkin would know a thing or two about sexy confidence.
I let you down, Chris. I'm sorry. Next time you ask, though, I'll be wearing my MeUndies. And I'll answer differently. MeUndies.com/thumbs.
Video game. Man, Jake, during the break, you mentioned C.P.U. Bach.
Oh, I mentioned it just now, Chris.
Yeah, I know. As you mentioned it presumably in a joking manner, but it is a cool thing to actually mention, even though there's nothing particularly topical about it. C.P.U. Bach is a game that was developed by Sid Meier and one other person I can't remember at Microprose. That attempted to basically determine the characteristics, qualities, and patterns of the music of Johann Sebastian Bach to the point that it can like interactively compose music that is convincingly
Sid Meier and Jeffrey Briggs.
Oh, Jeffrey Briggs. Okay, so he was he was like a longtime collaborator of Sid Meier's.
Yeah, your 3DO can do its best to, on the fly, compose Bach compositions.
Yeah. And why did this come up?
It's because the website Hardcore Gaming 101, which is a website that does in-depth dives on historical games, did an article on C.P.U. Bach, and it got posted to Twitter, and everyone said, "What the fuck is Sid Meier's C.P.U. Bach?"
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. It was early like 94 or something, somewhere, I don't know, somewhere.
What is the era of the 3DO?
I guess like 97 or something. I don't remember.
I really don't know.
But this was a weird like
94, you're right, yeah.
Okay. A weird project that Sid Meier did because he just loves the music of Bach, and like Sid Meier is in fact, I don't know if he still is, but for a long time was the organist at his local church. Sid Meier is just a really like sort of atypical game development figure. Like, I don't know. He's definitely in the category of people we were talking about before the break who like reads history books and knows about the world.
From the maker of Civilization and
He
Railroads
didn't read any history
and
books.
Pirates
Doesn't know shit.
comes Bach.
Yep, it's super good. I love it.
Yeah, it's good.
Sid Meier is great. And I love that he made a game called C.P.U. Bach, which is a play on C.P.E. Bach, which was one of Bach's sons. I think it's Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, if I remember correctly. I know this because I took
like PDQ Bach.
took piano lessons as a kid. What?
Like PDQ Bach. Do you know what PDQ Bach is?
What?
Oh, this is incredibly nerdy. It's a group that creates pseudo like Bach sounding music, but it's just all just garbage. It's just all like it usually starts out sounding like, you know, a Bach chorale or something, but then it just turns into absolute garbage every time. Like they're consistent in just making terrible music, and they perform like, you know, in concert, and you can just go watch them play just terrible atonal garbage. It's really good. Anyway.
Good.
Doesn't sound that good. I thought you said PewDiePie Bach.
PewDiePie Bach.
You were trying
You know, like
to
a
get
YouTube star,
first as
PewDiePie
well.
Bach.
PewDiePie Bach?
Yeah.
Pie Bach? PewDiePie Bach? Is that you?
The same.
Anyway, CPU Bach
PDQ
is
Bach
cool.
is my dad.
I don't. That's it. Just
That's it.
Look up CPU Bach on the
Podcast's
internet,
over.
and it's a fascinating thing that exists, and you can watch YouTube videos of it, and you can.
Yeah,
there's a video of Sid Meier. The reason I noticed this recently is because Doug Wilson, who developed JS Joust, posted about, I guess, the Hardcore Gaming 101 thing that you were talking about, Jake. But he also linked to a video that was an excerpt of, I guess, like I don't know what you'd call this. Someone made a video where they just talked to like tons of musicians and creative people about what they like about JS Bach. And Sid Meier, like almost everyone in there was a musician, but that also Sid Meier was in there.
That
Because he
video
made this
series
game.
must have
It was
been
really
made
cool.
right sometime around the time of CPU Bach. Was it
No.
not? Oh, weird.
No, it was within the last several years.
So it's
And
just
so it
made
was
by a
very,
nerd.
like, very much a retrospective. Yeah, for Sid Meier, he was talking about a thing that he worked on
Yeah.
a long time ago. But it was cool. Anyway,
And maybe he'll bring it back the way that he brought Pirates back.
well,
Bring it
yeah,
back.
Soren Johnson, who is the lead designer of Civilization 4 and who also runs the Designer Notes podcast on our network.
Jesus.
I know. When this came up on Twitter and everyone was talking about CPU Bach for like 2 days, Soren replied and said that he basically spent years trying to get Sid Meier to make a new version of CPU Bach.
Oh, man.
I mean, all the algorithms, presumably, you could have just kept the same. You just would have had way like better, more convincing modern synthesis for the actual
You
music.
get so much deeper into that fugue with a new computer.
I mean, you could. So,
Thanks, Jake.
Computer processing unit. It's central. Fuck me. I've got to go. It's hot in here. In the Bach family, it's computer. Fuck.
God, that's just a fucking Frank Zappa child name. Computer processing unit.
Yes, it
His
is.
daughter is named Moon Unit.
Yeah. Moon Unit. Bach. Zappa.
MUB
Oh,
Bach.
man, Dweezil and Moon Unit.
Yep, pretty good.
I saw Dweezil Zappa play at the Gang Awards, the Game Audio Network
Really?
Guild at GDC, like 2007 or
Wow.
something. Yeah.
I guess I wasn't there for that one.
Yeah.
You weren't in the gang.
I went to the
that
gang. I used to go to the Gang Awards. I don't know why, but I did.
Because you love game audio.
Yeah.
What's up, guys, on this podcast that's really just humming along?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, we're back. I forgot about that.
It's just, oh god, you had to know that. Yeah, anyway. The podcast after Danielle left, we would just like weirdly float.
Guys,
Even though
remember-
we've done
remember this,
podcasts
like,
without Danielle,
This weird
it's just
Bach game.
like
You know, World of War Boats.
so you just like you can write this anyway.
All right. Well, here's an actual thing that happened really recently. I only found out about this like an hour before the podcast, and I thought it was really cool.
Scoops.
Some people have, maybe just one person, I'm not quite sure, has just like started developing new content and patches for Spacebar DF-9, which is a Double Fine like space base simulator game that Jake and I coincidentally both worked on, but that's not really like that's not why I think it's interesting or relevant to this discussion. But it's just a cool thing that is happening because the game script to that game was like released with a permissive enough license. The guy just decided like, I'm just going to add more stuff to this game. And there's like a thread on the Double Fine forums where the guy is just like releases his new patch and has just been tracking the progress.
Do you know what stuff is actually included inside of this? Or it's not really relevant, but unless you're a person who's played a bunch of Space Base.
There's a combination of like tuning style stuff as well as there is just some new content. And one of the, like a bunch of new content, as far as I can tell, not like a game changing amount probably, but one of the things in the thread is people who just have, he's like, I'm going to put in some more disease names. And then people have ideas and someone threw out the idea, what if one of the diseases was called loving you, so that you could be like, oh, you've got a bad case of loving you, just inserted into the
like a Valentine's Day card.
Yeah. The just Mad Libs structure of the way the game, which is like kind of there's a lot of stuff in that thread that is in the spirit of the sense of humor of that game, which is cool. People trying to sort of like fit into the tonal universe of Space Base. It's a cool thing to see. Like, it's a really cool, pretty unique.
Yeah, I like it in the case of Space Base because that is it's a real, like, Space Base is a pretty aggressively simulated game. Like, it's sort of is aiming for being somewhere between like a builder and base management game and a social simulator like The Sims or something like that.
Right. Yep.
And that in and of itself is weird, but also it was a relatively small game like Space Base. It was an early access game that was not in development for very long before it 1.0'd out of being in development. So it's cool to see that specific thing get picked up by a dude on the internet and screwed with the way that usually doesn't seem like it happens unless it's something like Worms Armageddon or like an old, like, I really wish that Bungie had kept making marathon games or something. It's usually totally not Space-based DF-9 game about space chickens and neon cheeseburger signs and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway.
Yep, it's a cool thing. Because I found out about it basically right before we did this podcast, so I don't know as much about it as I probably could. But it just seems like a really awesome project. It's like feels very much in the spirit of that game, which is just like knowing JP, who has been on this podcast before and was the project lead of that game. Like he's very he's a very sort of community oriented person and very kind of like into sort of collective structures and stuff. And so it seems like a cool way for that game to be extended. So
yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
Space Base. Man, I'm going to talk about Space Bases for half a second, even though so I'm back on Super Metroid.
Oh yeah.
Oh man.
Because I'm a bad person who will never finish Super Metroid and
You've
just
never
starts
finished
it over
Super
and over.
Metroid?
No. Okay. I talked about Super Metroid on the podcast like 2 years ago when I'd been playing it obsessively, and after just I was rereading an article that I once read that was a deep dive into sort of the structure of Super Metroid and how players discover things across the game. And as you said, the way that you sort of cycle, like loop over the map multiple times. And it was a really strong examination of it. And it made me realize that when I last talked about Super Metroid on the podcast 2 years ago, I was like 4/5 of the way done with that game and I didn't know it. But I was playing it on an emulator on a computer that I no longer have. So I just bought it on the Wii U store and I've been playing it. Man, in my new apartment, this is bad that I've discovered this. The Wii U controller has range into the bedroom.
Oh man, yeah.
So I now just have a functioning Wii U that I can play in bed.
I know.
It seems great, but the buttons are so loud. It's really bad, actually. The Wii U buttons are loud.
So you can't play it like...
I can't plug in the headphones and just play while Dana's asleep because I would just be a child going on a game controller, which is literally what I am. Literally with a child's toy.
Right.
But Holy fuck, Super
But you
Metroid
wouldn't
is
be able
good.
to mask it, which is basically the goal of our like pop culture society.
Right.
Is to allow you to be a child with your toys,
I can't,
but to like,
it's very
but
obvious.
for it to be a secret to everyone except for you.
Our evening life, just a couple nights this week, once I discovered this, became a bad scene because it was us in bed next to each other with me playing Super Metroid and her on the iPad playing Hearthstone. Woof. It was an interesting. We both sort of went, okay. Well, this is
Man, Dana's into Hearthstone.
Oh yeah, Dana loves Hearthstone.
Wow.
Oh,
I would
man.
not have guessed that.
Yeah, she played it a bunch when she got her iPad like two years ago or whatever, and then I told her that Tavern Brawl exists, which is the sort
is
of
that?
like it's the like the mutations like weekly different game rules. Everyone plays with like a
cool.
fixed deck or
Challenges.
weekly challenges, and then now she plays it every night. The Tavern Brawl exists. It only runs a few days a week.
Wow.
Yeah, interesting life. But anyway, Super Metroid. Holy shit. I don't know what to say about Super Metroid other than
It's still good.
I never played Super Metroid as a kid. I didn't own
Yeah.
Super Metroid. I didn't own Metroid either. I played the hell out of Metroid Prime. And I really, like, I guess for a person who's my age, which is 34, who grew up in the United States of America, and the Super Nintendo is the game console that I, like, have the probably most historic affinity for. But, man, I just fucking love the aesthetic of the Super Nintendo, especially given the place that Nintendo as a company is now. If you go back and look at Star Fox, Super Metroid, and like Yoshi's Island and a few other games like that, the aesthetic sensibility of that company at that time was fucking hardcore. Like not like hardcore in any like disgusting way, but just like like if you, I mean, I imagine you guys remember the opening of Super Metroid. It's basically just sort of like really light but ominous strings and just red text says 1994, and then it cuts to like a slow pan past like a really zoomed in pixel art version of a console that's flickering, and then it says Nintendo.
With a dead person on the ground.
And then it pans past a fucking pixel art corpse, and then it says presents Metroid 3, which is not what it's called, but I think they just liked
I love
Alien
that it's
movies.
called that in the
And then
in
it
the
says
credits.
Super Metroid
Wait,
again.
is it really? Oh, I don't
Yeah, it says
remember that.
Nintendo presents Alien or Metroid 3.
Alien 3.
Basically, whatever. But it's just this crazy, ominously dark lit thing that looks like it like sprite art that almost looks like it's like Wolfenstein 3D, basically. Like, not like it's grim, but you're just like, that's just a lady scientist dead on the ground. And like the whole opening of that game, man, whatever. Just like my mental image of what Nintendo is so shaped at this point by the GameCube Plus that if you go back and look at sort of just how intense and sci-fi looking that game is, and how basically so many games that try to look like a pixel art sci-fi game at this point are just actually aping Super Metroid from 1994. It's
true.
It's interesting.
For me, it's always in those like dark grays, like the gray scale, side of like the pixel art. I don't know, like the whole run up to the like when you land on the planet, and then there's like 10 or 15 minutes of just exploring like the dead, version of the level before all the monsters come out. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's just that really quiet, like, and it's almost like, it feels like desaturated, and it's like a really interesting,
There's
like
the way that Nintendo achieves a cinematic feel inside of a game that is like not cinematic in its camera presentation, but Metroid just, you're in control the entire time. You control the pacing of the experience of the opening 15 minutes of Super Metroid. But it feels like the most directed and presented cinematic experience. Like all the stuff on the abandoned base that then the countdown timer goes and you've got to leave. But like somehow they have like gradient based fog and mist on a Super Nintendo, and it's really impressive. And then the whole scene starts to tip, which is surprising as fuck. And then you end up on the planet that's empty other than just the rain sound effects,
which is actually the planet. I guess it's the same planet for Metroid.
It is,
1,
because you drop back down. You drop back down into the room that Mother Brain was killed in Metroid 1.
Which is crazy, just as a
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is the exact conversation you and I had 2 years
Probably.
ago. I'm sorry.
But it's really high concept for a Super Nintendo game, period, right?
Yeah,
like, there's no other Super Nintendo game you can point to that was doing anything like that. It's great.
Yeah, also thinking about this game as a contemporary for from Nintendo to Super Mario World and Ocarina of Time. Although I think it came out later. It's sort of the 16-bit entry into the Metroid series.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that game has concerns that are just at a different level from other Nintendo stuff at that time. Just Super Metroid has the like constantly running music of a Super Nintendo game that you think about when you think about 8 and 16-bit games, except that it absolutely doesn't, because like every 4 or 5 screens the music changes, but then also it's totally down for just giving you a striking moment where you walk into a door and there's nothing but a ground plane and you can't see the top of the room and there's no music. There's just the sound of your footsteps like on the metal running for like 10 screen widths worth of space.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
I don't know. Super Metroid. I don't what's up, Chris?
Oh, no. I just, because you're talking about the aesthetic of that console and that time, have you seen Read Only Memories?
No.
Okay, this is a game that I have not played far enough of to have any kind of like interesting or worthwhile opinion on, but you should look it up because it is not the Nintendo aesthetic of 1994 Super Nintendo, but it is definitely a game. It came out like today, I think. It came out like now. It looks like Snatcher or something, like the Hideo Kojima adventure game that was basically contemporary to Super Metroid games like that, I think. It looks like a SNES era adventure game,
right?
Where there are sort of illustrated 2D backgrounds that are composed and straight ahead, and it is a style of kind of console pixel retro throwback that is not usually done.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a cool thing, and it's got music that evokes that era as well.
Nice.
I know that it started as a Kickstarter run by Gamer X, I think, the
conference.
The conference, and is related to that community. But I think it's sort of like maybe outgrew its original kind of spec and like became I don't know, like a bigger game than it was going to be. I believe that's the case. Anyway, it's called Read Only Memories, and obviously I'm not qualified to like give a real opinion, but it's a cyberpunk thing. The thing that struck me about it when I started playing it, because I didn't know anything about the plot at all, other than it was some kind of cyberpunk thing. I think Danielle mentioned it like a year ago, maybe. It's set in Neo San Francisco in 2064.
Good.
And I didn't know that. And I started playing it, and there's references to like really specific San Francisco like sub neighborhoods that are just part of the, just dialogue and backstory.
Tender Knob 2064.
Tender Knob. It's I don't know. It was good. So that was a surprise to me because I don't use San Francisco right now is so much in the air of like the Golden Gate Bridge being destroyed in every movie and so on. It was funny to see a version of that actually has like really hyper local references.
Yeah, man, it's strange to go back to. I played Super Nintendo way longer than that console had any business being played by anyone. But looking back at it now, like where it's really, really sort of crisp pixel art style across all of their games, but there's not. But all of the games themselves are very self-contained in their own aesthetic. Like F-Zero and Star Fox and Super Metroid are all sci-fi games, but they don't look the same. And I'm sure that what Nintendo was doing at that time was not cutting edge, like because things like Metal Slug existed, but all of those self-contained, incredibly realized aesthetics that were not concerned with necessarily being like trend setting or trend following at the time. Like it wasn't anime inspired or kids cartoon inspired or inspired by films at that time, even though it still feels of that era. And also all those games feel very all ages and interesting and diverse without forcing themselves so aggressively into the umbrella of being a family game, which I think Nintendo just traps themselves with over and over again now. Like a little kid can play Super Metroid.
Nintendo got into the worst version of that where their internal stuff was that, and then every once in a while they would try to be like, but also we're publishing this like super rated
Metroid
game.
Other M.
No, I don't mean that. I mean like
you do also mean that.
That's not what I was thinking of. But what I meant was like Bayonetta 2 only on Wii.
Right.
Nintendo trying to
Resident
reclaim
Evil 0.
like Resident Evil. Yeah, not that there's anything inherently wrong with those games, but I just mean it was a really shitty version of
Zombie
Nintendo
Wii U.
trying to cover all the
It feels like it's this
bases.
weird binary of it's either for all families or it's for a gamer, and I know that it's stupid for me, like I said, as a 34-year-old American dude to say, man, remember the Super Nintendo and how great it was? Fuck me. But, like, I do think that lineup was a really good template for, like, Super Metroid seems fucking dangerous. F-Zero seems like a crazy high-risk racing game. You can think they're cool as a teenager or as a 25 or 35-year-old or as an 8-year-old. If you're a dorky dude who likes video games, I guess, or dorky person of any gender or whatever. But like, I don't know. I'm really enjoying being recaptivated by Super Metroid.
So you think they lost that by the end time N64 rolled around?
I don't entirely know.
I don't think N64.
Man, the N64
when was the thing?
like GameCube, which is a console I otherwise love.
Yeah, it's when they. It's
that
like
was kind of when they really slid
the how many millions of Mario parties can we put out, and that era seems like it was when Nintendo decided or realized, probably more appropriately, that their Super Mario universe cast of characters had, by virtue of people growing up with these things, had the cachet of Disney characters. It feels like they just like tripled down on everything having that aesthetic, which seems misguided given that it seems like they're doing the Mickey Mouse and Friends thing, but that was what Disney did in like the 30s through the 50s, and now Disney puts out like Pirates of the Caribbean movies and Star Wars or whatever the heck they don't. Disney's definition even of that is closer to what I feel like Nintendo was doing in the 90s. As far as just the breadth of content that they put out under the sort of all ages entertainment banner. I don't know.
That's true.
Anyway, I don't know. I'm talking about this as much as I am.
That's okay.
I was just reminded of it so intensely.
You guys want to?
The problem with the N64 is that it's ugly as fuck. If you go look at Super Nintendo games, they're so good. Anyway,
no, it's true.
Fuck the
That's aged way
N64.
better.
Stupid.
Yeah.
Mario 64 is garbage. It's fine. Mario Sunshine's the good one though. Fucking bring it.
I mean, it's not.
Nick Brecken is not pleased about what is being said.
Yeah, jump at a fucking painting. It looks like Christmas Lemmings. No, it looks like Lemmings. It looks like Lemmings 3D. Christmas Lemmings is great.
Yeah.
2D, classic, beautiful.
Jake is old manning to the max right now.
God, I fucking hate Mario 64.
Really? I'm done.
You have to be.
I feel bad for hating Mario 64, given how much you like it and how much I think you have good taste.
Yeah, I would definitely
being
recommend
the
it.
first like full polygon game I ever played. I liked how abstract it was. I'm sure going back now it would fall apart instantly, but I don't know. I liked it. I liked its like sort of vague nature.
I've talked about this before, but it was so hard to go from Nintendo on the Super Nintendo at just like the top of their fucking game from an aesthetics and just like tight everything standpoint to just like that blobby fucking mess with Mario having that shitty accent.
Which is why I think the people that tend to love it are probably just slightly younger than us and didn't go from that to that. They just went straight to Mario 64 and went,
or their parents wouldn't let them own Quake before Mario 64.
Or that, yeah.
It's true. I did not play Quake before Mario 64.
Or whatever 3D games on computers,
Yeah.
like real people
It
played.
was, yeah.
Jake is just planning all the
How many buttons does your mouse have?
All right, I'm going to go into
Check your keybinds, Nick.
So here's an email.
Check your keybinds at the door.
Whoa. Things have gotten violent here.
I don't usually read this category of email, but I'm going to read this one just because it's kind of adorable.
Jake can eat shit, writes Nick Brecken.
No, I want everyone to write in and talk about Mario 64 and how great it was.
All right,
No, don't do that.
Maybe by the end of this email, you will have written that email.
God, someone's just going to write it and tell me everything about Mario 64. That's great.
fine. Do
They'll
that.
be wrong, and it's
Really?
fine.
Just don't do that, please.
No, they can write in about why it's good. Why not?
No, it's great.
I've heard why it's good
What's that?
so many times.
Okay, well,
Well, it's
whatever.
fine. You
All
can
right.
love it. That's great.
Do whatever you want. Nicole Dutka writes, Hi, Adult Thumbs team. I'm writing this email because my husband Will, who is a fan of your podcast, has his birthday this Sunday, the 4th of October. Whoops. And I was hoping you may give him a shout out for his birthday. We got married a few weeks ago, and as a wedding gift, I surprised him by buying a 4K 28-inch monitor for him to use when he games. Apparently, the one I got him is the wrong resolution or something like that. So I've given up buying him gaming stuff. I was wondering if you could do a shout out for him. That would be a great gift.
The right thing to get him was an 8K monitor. He told me.
Yeah, right.
Isn't the 4th of October the day that Marty McFly travels to and Back to the Future?
It was exactly the day,
right?
that Marty McFly travels to.
yeah.
Man, that's true.
It's exactly that day. P.S. I'm not really into gaming, but I enjoy the podcast and listen to it with my husband. I'm not a gaming enthusiast, but your podcast is enjoyable and fun to listen to. Thanks for your time, Nicole.
Well, I'm sorry about that earlier part. I'm also sorry that your husband loves Mario 64 and wanted a standard definition CRT
Why did
television.
you give me a 480i?
Yeah.
Yeah, give me a Zenith 27-inch Zenith CRT.
Sony Trinitron.
Oh man, the Trinitron.
I need to see that giant eel's
I need
face.
Mario to be as fuzzy as possible.
I need to know that sphere rolling down the hill is not just a picture of a sphere, but is actually 3D.
All right, Matt Higgins writes, "Hey Thumbs, sorry if this site has been mentioned already. If you have heard of,
Wait, we didn't give the shout out to her, whatever. Hi,
Yeah.
we did by way of reading. Hey, happy birthday!
Happy birthday! Woo! There you go.
Happy birthday, Will.
For
Okay.
last Sunday.
Matt Higgins writes, "Hey Thumbs, have you heard of MetalGearTimeline.com? I agree with Chris about it being a little difficult to understand what happens in the Metal Gear games by reading a wiki, but I found this format to be more digestible than a wiki. Hope this helps, Matt." So I went to MetalGearTimeline.com, and it's a really impressive collection of chronological information about Metal Gear. And I just kind of decided I'm not going to read all this, but if you do want to find that stuff all out, you can on that website. It's cool.
Isn't it official?
No.
I assume not. It's so good that it's MetalGearTimeline.com has one purpose.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not official, but it's a cool thing though. So there's that. What else do we have here? Oh, Finn Downs writes, "Hey Thumbs, the discussion you had last week about Nick Bostrom's paper on life on Mars and the Fermi paradox was great. I wanted to point out there were scenarios where we could find life on Mars and it wouldn't have devastating implications for the survival of the human race. One example is the theory of panspermia. It is possible life could have originated on Earth or even Mars and was then transferred between the two planets via meteorites. It might seem unlikely that microbial life would be able to survive the impact, a space vacuum, or the radiation it would be subjected to, but there's evidence that it could. After all, there are microbes living in geothermal vents at the bottom of the ocean. We've also found meteorites on Earth that have originated on Mars. The panspermia theory has flaws too, and I'm not a scientist, so don't take what I say as gospel, but it makes me feel better to hear reasons why humanity might not be doomed. Keep up discussions about the future because robot news is what hooked me on the podcast in the first place. Cheers, Finn from Sydney." Thomas Huber writes, "I was listening to Nick describe Vigo the Carpathian while I was walking through a pitch-black area of my neighborhood on a moonless night. His story got into my head, and I could swear I heard someone in the bushes and footsteps following me. Needless to say, that was the fastest I've ever walked that block. I'm a 27-year-old man. Thanks, Nick." Tom Huber.
It was Vigo the Carpathian.
"He killed me. I'm dead." The wizard, baboo.
Thanks for that.
Yeah,
You're thanking Chris for saying the wizard baboo?
Yeah.
you're welcome.
Spaff's been on this podcast like on and off for months now, waiting for you to say that.
Yeah.
Well, that's that, I guess,
Yeah.
for this week.
I can quit and move to New York now.
True.
Now that you've done that.
One of us will be moving to New York each week.
Please vote on who you would like to move to New York the most.
You'll have to balance, like...
You cannot keep voting for Danielle.
Right.
She has already done that.
Press 2 for Mario
who do you want to be
64.
joining?
Well,
Danielle.
with the voting, you have to, like... You're kind of making a decision both who do you want to remove from this lineup, but who do you want to add to Danielle's new podcast?
Right.
So there's, like, an interesting give-take to that.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, just a note to the jury, we ask that you do not consider the Mario 64 testimony when making your decision. Unless, of course, your opinion about it is correct.
Well...
What? That undersea level is amazing? I'm not going to get into it. Nick, come on.
What's wrong with Mario 64?
It's fine.
He just told you. Why are you asking him again? Stop. Don't let him do this, Nick. Thanks for listening to Idle Thumbs. If you like this podcast somehow,
you still like it.
if you still like this podcast, please recommend us to a friend. That is a really, really helpful way for us to get the word out. And it's probably how pretty much everyone listening, I would guess, most of the people who listen to this podcast probably heard it from someone else who has listened to it. So if you like this show and think that you have friends who would, let them know. We would really appreciate it. That would be awesome. You could review us on iTunes as well if you're feeling super generous. And we run a number of other podcasts on our network at idlethumbs.net, including the recently launched Esports Today with Rob Zacny and Andrew Gruen, as well as the monthly in-depth game developer interview show Designer Notes with Soren Johnson and sort of a rotating crew of interviewers at this point. So, yeah. Stay tuned for Idle Weekend with Danielle and Rob Zacny.
When's that starting up?
Within the next few weeks.
Yep. Nick,
Exciting.
the way that Mario moves
Oh my God.
is fantastic,
Jesus.
but that game is ugly as fuck.
I'm outta
and
here,
conceptually, it's a fucking mess.
Bye.
That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. Mario Galaxy's great. Chris edited out everything I said about Mario 64. It was great content, Chris. People were really going to engage with that content.
Okay.